Somebody said to me this morning, I wonder if the release of these files that Donald Trump was so adamant to get out has anything to do with him sending a warning. Like, you guys, it's all out in the open. So if you try any funny business and you don't know what's going through his head about what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania still, but, you can suspect, right? What would be going through your head if that happened to you? What would be going through your wife's head? What would be going through your family's head? I think we know what he's worried about. And so this is his way of saying, yeah, times are changing and we're going to get all this information out there. So be on alert. Think about this. They were trying to protect something. Maybe it was the agencies. Maybe they were trying to protect us from World War III. I'm not really entirely sure what it was, but I do know this. There was something that they put into place around 1948 called the Smith-Mundt Act. And it came about during the Cold War because they wanted to control the flow of information. They realized how valuable information was. And of course, we had a leg up on everybody because this is the United States of America. We had all this creativity and we were really great at tech. So we had radio. And then, of course, TV and Hollywood, et cetera. And so we were able to basically put out our message all over the world to control the narrative. The U.S. government poured a ton of money and a ton of resources into this through this Smith-Mundt Act. And they had Voice of America and Radio Free Europe. The UK was involved in this too. But here's the important thing. It did not allow that information to be turned back onto the US. And that's what has since changed. So just think about that for a second. So any of the spin that they were pushing overseas, that spin was not actually pushed in the US media. That was pushed by US media funded entities overseas. They weren't turning it back on US citizens. They had this kind of Chinese wall, pun intended, to not allow for that. Mike Pence, who used to be an official at the State Department and is now totally committed to this freedom of information, and it's sort of his massive platform. He was on Joe Rogan's show, and he just talked about this, and I think it's really, really important to think about this because guess what, guys? It changed under Obama. It changed in 2013 or 2012, okay? They came up with a modernization of this, which lifted the domestic ban on U.S. government-produced media. They could then allow for these NGOs and USAID to be paying U.S. media organizations who could then turn and manipulate the story to U.S. audiences. So then the U.S. gets sucked into this giant psych op, right? I mean, and that explains a lot, I think. Since 2013, and Donald Trump comes on the scene in 2016, and they put the whole thing into high gear with Russia, and on it goes. All right, I want to go to Mike Pence because this is important. Remember, Mike Pence used to be an official of the State Department. Now he's devoted his career, his life to making sure that everybody gets this information out. Listen to him here. This is important. The Smith-Mundt Act, 1948. Here's Mike.
What was done then under Obama was the effective repeal of it. It was called the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, but the modernization got rid of the whole purpose of it, the firewall, because at the time the media and media control was seen as the linchpin crux of winning the Cold War, piping in pro-U.S. Media influence because everything moved after World War II from kinetic warfare and military occupation. We used to militarily occupy the Philippines, for example, after we won the Spanish-American War. But that was banned under international law, territorial acquisition by military force in 1948. So we had to win elections, and we had to influence the passage of laws in foreign countries by having an apparatus inside those countries that influenced the hearts and minds of people, which influenced who they voted for, which then determined the government. So you had to move towards political vassalage rather than military occupation. And what the Smith-Mundt Act did is, simultaneous with the creation of this in 1948, Congress recognized the Frankensteinian monster they were creating by authorizing a covert, permanent Department of Dirty Tricks, and this is their phrase, not mine, to do this cloak and dagger, to to infiltrate and co-opt the universities, the unions, the media, the politicians, the judges, the whole swarm army. What I have been calling for a long time the USAID Truman Show, because these people in these foreign countries have no idea, how many of the things they interact with that are effectively a movie set being constructed by the U.S. State Department and its sister influence.
Okay, he's onto something, right? So we had to control the political situations overseas. So what do? We put in media operations to influence the culture, to be able to therefore influence whoever was being elected. And we had a lot of influence on this. The scary thing is that, again, and we're going to get back to this in a second, we turned it on ourselves. Obama. Thank you very much, Obama. Man. 2013 National Defense Authorization Act lifted the domestic ban on U.S. government-produced media, allowing such content to be available to U.S. audiences. At the time, people were really concerned that basically this was going to turn into the propaganda machine that we had all over the world coming back to bite us in the you-know-what, and sure enough, it did. It did. So here's more of Mike. Credit to him and Joe for having him on. Joe Rogan, Mike Benz, talking about this issue. Listen.
To make any media narrative go viral in any country on earth because of the suite of CIA proprietary media functions and its distribution network, especially when the U.S. had first mover advantage in radio and print. It's basically the U.S. and U.K. were the only games in town, really, in having robust radio, film, TV, and print media. So the Smith-Mundt said, okay, you can do that abroad. You can plant fake news stories in France. You can have propaganda blare into Africa or Western Europe or Central Asia, but that can't come home. You can't psyop our own people with your propaganda organ abroad, because the whole point of authorizing this is that we get cheaper gas, we get import-export markets, we get a high standard of living, because if a foreign government doesn't want to give up its resources or allow a U.S. military base or allow joint partnerships or exports of goods or U.S. multinational corporations to operate there, then the American people suffer economically. So it was always designed to say, listen, you can do this dirty stuff abroad, but it can't come home.
Okay. So it couldn't come home. But sure enough, it did eventually. I just wonder, when you think about all of this being in place, was there something that they were doing abroad, right? It's one of the theories out there that somehow the CIA was involved or looked the other way if the Cubans were involved or Russia, whatever. And there's evidence in there that we kind of knew that JFK was a target, and yet we're looking the other way. And you also wonder what kind of operation they were doing overseas, since they were allowed to have this dirty bag of tricks, their words, as Mike said, not ours, that they could put into play overseas. They just couldn't turn it on ourselves. And that's sort of where we are today now, because it's been turned and unleashed onto ourselves. Let's go to his explanation. This is one more little clip I just got to show you, because it's so important when we think about how we have been played and played over and over and over again.
We're up against a much actually deeper, darker problem with this USAID scandal, and as people will see increasingly, the scandals that will break open at the Pentagon and the State Department, which is that we have a Smith-Mundt problem for funding and operations. It's not just propaganda. The blob, our foreign policy establishment, can fund groups that effectively work with prosecutors domestically, or that work at media, dual use. We give them foreign grants to do media propaganda abroad, but they operate here. Or social media censorship, to coerce foreign countries to pass foreign censorship laws that explicitly and are intended to attack U.S. social media companies and in U.S. peer-to-peer speech. So we need that protection. If we're going to keep this function at all, we need a hard firewall and absolute grotesque penalties for any violation.
Yes. Okay? Yes. We absolutely do, because what has happened? What has happened? I mean, it's like they say it's night and we say it's day, and they're like, no, it's night. Up is down, down is up, and you're not ever given the truth. Joe Biden's biggest frustration with his administration was that he didn't control information enough. Think about that. He did not control information enough. I'm like, buddy, for goodness sakes, you had the entire world, right, on speed dial for your parroting of talking points. I mean, there was this one the other day, right, where we saw the Democrats with their little talking points. It was crazy. There were 3 of them out at first. Remember this?
I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
That ain't true. That's what you just heard. Since day one of Donald Trump's presidency, prices are not down, they're up. Inflation is getting worse, not better. The prices of groceries.
It was literally the same exact script. And then it was 5? Seriously?
I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
That ain't true. That's what you just heard. Since day one of Donald Trump's presidency, prices are not down, they're up. Inflation is getting worse, not better. The prices of groceries, gas, eggs, of essentials, it's not getting better, it's getting worse. Meanwhile,
Donald Trump has done nothing to lower costs for you. Instead, he's part of violent police action.
But just one more time. I won't even show you the next. They were like different iterations. One of my producers kept showing me. He's like, oh my God, there's more. Okay, before you knew it, you had 22 Democrats with the exact same talking points, the exact same script. It's like the CIA op that we're talking about, right? That Mike Pence is saying. Like they get a narrative and then they just push it out. But nowadays, people are smarter because they can immediately show you where it's coming from. In this case, well, we don't actually know who it's coming from, interestingly enough. But the Democrats are all saying the exact same thing.
I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
That's what you just
You get my point. Okay, so now we're talking about the ability to take taxpayer money and feed it to various arms of the CIA and any kind of ops now that are under the jurisdiction of whoever's in charge. This is what Obama made happen, okay? So 2013, they start putting this stuff. So it's only been around, 12 years or so. But if you think about the craziness over the last 12 years and how we keep saying, but, and they're like, nope, shut it down. Now I think it's all coming out. And I think Mike is right when he says you got to have a firewall, because otherwise you're using taxpayer funds to create propaganda, which is then being turned on us. And boy, are they angry. They're so angry that this is getting exposed. Everything's getting exposed. I mean, they're so angry that, we know that a good percentage of the budget for the BBC, for example, comes from USAID, US taxpayers. We know that the New York Times is getting millions and millions of dollars. We know that Politico during 2024 was getting $8.2 million, charging $10,000 per account that they were giving to government employees that they said you just had to have. They try and disguise it along the way. Okay, we're going to give you a Politico subscription for $10,000 a year. But what is this other than just manipulating, as Mike said, the media here and today? And now they can't really do it, and they don't know what to think now. They're just going to say that this is because of Trump and he's somehow a dictator. I mean, think about what they were saying in the U.S. media. I would sometimes be like, you got to be kidding me. Listening to Morning Joe and The View and the Disney actors and the whole lot of them, right? They're on the payroll. I mean, effectively, what we've learned is that this particular act that Obama modernized allowed for money to be exchanged to bankroll NGOs, political organizations, universities, so that they could have an effect on the public opinion back here at home. And now it's all coming undone.